Good morning, everyone. Welcome to History in the Kitchen. I'm just getting our cameras set up here. We have an ASL interpreter with us this morning, Elaine, who you see up there on screen, and I'm just getting everybody else squared away. Rachel, are you having issues with video? Let me know if I need to come pop over. Ah, there we go. There's our ingredients cam. I'm going to spotlight that. And once Rachel gets her camera on, we'll spotlight her as well. There she is.
So
All right.
no audio on that one.
Yep, you're good. All right. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Lacey, and I'm joined over here on camera by Rachel as well. She's going to be the one cooking this morning. I know we've got some repeat visitors, but for those of you who are new to History in the Kitchen, we are super excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. We are recording this session, and just as a note, if you have your camera and your audio on, there is some possibility that you will be captured in the recording. If you'd like to make sure that your video and audio are not captured, you'll want to make sure that your camera is turned off and your audio stays muted through the program. We will have a couple of points where we'll invite you to go ahead and unmute yourself and turn your camera on when we pause the recording so that you don't get captured as a part of it, so that you can voice questions verbally. But if you have questions during the program, pop them into the chat. I'll read them out loud for Rachel. She's got a video over there, but mostly, as you can see, it doesn't look like we're looking at you when we're looking at
I was
the
pulling the chat up on that laptop.
So I will read those questions out loud for her so that we can respond to them verbally for you. Um, Again, welcome. We're super excited for History in the Kitchen. So today we are getting ready to do a recipe that fascinates Rachel and me a lot. Because we're not sure where the name came from. It's very exciting stuff. And my computer, I was just about to put the recipe up, but my computer decided it does not want to play fair. So bear with me just one moment. If you've participated before, you'll also note that we have a new website. We're still having a little bit of issues figuring out how to get everything squared away on that. So if you did not get a chance to download the recipe off of the online event page on Eventbrite, I will be dropping it into the chat in just a moment as a PDF so you can download that.
Do you want me to read out the historic recipe?
Nope,
Oh.
we're doing this a different way. Goodness gracious.
I will talk about this cookbook though. This cookbook is it's the receipt book of Elizabeth Raper, and it was like her great, however many greats it is, grandson decided to publish her recipes along with uh, a lot of information. Oh, that was my oven preheating. About a lot of information about her life, which is something we rarely have. And she lived in Scotland, and her family was bankers. They were bankers in Scotland. But she has we've if you've been here before, you know we've talked about that a lot of time you open these women's recipe books and it's really they're copying other people's recipes into their own recipe book, which is I do the same thing actually, just so I don't have to pull out my own cookbook. I can just look, oh, this is the recipe I always use for pancakes.
Mhm.
And but you see the same recipe over and over again. And this one has recipes we haven't seen before, which is really interesting. And German puffs is one of them that doesn't show up too often.
No, it doesn't. So if you are cooking along with us, here are the ingredients that you'll want to have prepared. You want some eggs, some flour, butter, nutmeg, sugar, milk, and cream, and then our other supplies. And I'm also going to drop that recipe as a PDF into the chat so you can download it and print it if you would like.
So while we're waiting to, I'm going to take my butter and I'm going to put it in the microwave because I need it to melt.
And you don't want it to be hot either when you get ready to put it into your mix in a little bit. All right, I'm going to flip us over to our next slide while Rachel is melting her butter. We would love to know. We'd love for you to look at this recipe and tell us what stands out for you. Is it similar to something you've seen before? Is it wildly different? Are there ingredients and amounts that seem a little wild? Let us know.
So I love that this recipe says to a good batter because I have recipes from my aunt, um, modern-ish recipes that always say to do things to a good batter. And it's like that tells you nothing because that depends on who you are.
Mm-hmm. I also love the final bit that they're good with a little melted butter, sugar, and sack. And for those of you who haven't joined us for programs like this one before, we talk about sack all the time, um, because it is in a lot of recipes, and it's sherry, typically a kind of a sweet sherry.
We made something with a wine sauce recently. What was that? It was the same idea, butter, sugar, and wine in that case.
The carrot pudding has a butter, a sack and sugar sauce. So we make recipes like this all the time, and we're used to looking at some of these things. Just a couple of things to note about our recipes. If you have never made a historic recipe before, when they talk about butter in recipes, what kind of butter are we going for, Rachel?
They would have had salted butter. The standard butter for them was salted because it keeps longer.
Yeah. And if it's a recipe that calls for unsalted butter, it'll usually be fresh butter or new butter, or sweet butter to indicate that that's the kind of butter that they want in the recipe.
My question as the off-camera person.
This is Sam, by the way. Sam is another one of our volunteers. Go for it, Sam.
Uh, it said 4 eggs on the recipe you have, right?
Yeah.
And it says 4
Mhm.
eggs on the German pasta recipe. So we didn't decrease the eggs on this one?
Oh, that's right. We made a mistake. Thanks for catching that, Sam. Well, Rachel's gonna get to do this on the fly. Um, Eggs in the past are not usually as big. Historic eggs are typically about the size of a medium or a small egg, and our standard today is large. So, Rachel, we typically downgrade at this ratio like an egg, so we'll probably use 3 eggs today.
Like this recipe, I have to say though, is super forgiving. So,
Yes. Yes.
um, like we're going to
Yes.
talk about. So, if you've read this recipe, you've probably said, and you've ever made a Dutch baby, you've probably said, this seems familiar, or a popover, or I just found out that there are Finnish ones, and I'm not going to try to say what the Finnish one is, but it means pancake. And there's
It
also
was something like
panna,
Panukuku. For Elaine's sake, this is PANNUKAKKU.
and there's definitely a Swedish version, and I have a Swedish friend, and she said they eat it with lingonberries and bacon.
That sounds delightful.
So, and all of those have different amounts of eggs, but they
Hmm.
all work. I think
Yeah.
and different amounts of sugar is is different one, whether you're eating it sweet or savory. This one is sort of somewhere in between.
Hmm. Well, I'm going to take down our screen share so we can go ahead and get started with that cooking. Rachel has melted her butter already for those of you who've just joined us. And we've got our flour pre-measured. Rachel, take it away.
All right, so I have a 3/4 of a cup of flour. And if you go down, I preheated my oven to 425, and I will spray the muffin tins. You can also make these as one big, sort of the way you would a Dutch baby. The one in a cast iron pan is really, really nice, but cast iron pan, if it's well seasoned, makes a very nice puff. Um, but it says after that, add all the ingredients together, the best kind of recipe. So I'm going to do slightly out of order. I'm going to put in my dry ingredients. So this is 2 tablespoons of sugar, just regular old sugar, a quarter teaspoon, half a teaspoon of nutmeg. And if you've been with us before, you know that we usually use, where am I? That we usually use whole nutmeg. We couldn't find the grater this morning. So pre-grated nutmeg it is. And I'm going to throw these two together.
As you can see, we're having a little bit of a morning, getting everything going. But these are going to be great, and they mix up really fast, which is amazing. And now while Rachel is getting her eggs in there, and as we talked about just a second ago, we're probably going to go with 3 eggs instead of 4, because Rachel and I made a mistake.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. I will adjust that in the final version that we do get on the website. So she's adding her eggs in. She's going to go in, I think, with her melted butter next.
She's going to break those up a tiny bit.
Excellent.
Which is not necessary, but I always have to do that. And I'm actually also trying to make sure I don't cook those eggs when I add the butter.
Yes.
So I want to get them in there a little bit. And then this is just whole milk, 1.25 cups of whole milk. And then the 1/4 cup of butter. And again, just make sure I'm not cooking my eggs, but my butter was pretty cool.
And Rachel is obviously doing all of this herself, but if you guys are cooking at home with kiddos, obviously this is a great recipe to work with them, because it is a dump and go recipe. Now we're getting fancy. We're using the modern tools. In the 18th century, they were using a birch whisk. If you don't have an immersion blender, if you don't have a big full blender, you can go ahead and do this with a whisk at home. What we're going for on this batter, from what we did in our testing and the couple of times we've made it, it needs to be a very, very smooth batter. And we can't hear it, Rachel, so you can go at it. You can turn the speed up if you need to.
Did it mute me automatically?
It did mute that automatically, or it's cutting out that sound, so we can't hear it. So Rachel's just getting that super, super, super smooth. If you're doing this at home and you're doing this with a whisk, it's gonna take a little bit longer. And I think we can see some air bubbles in there, but Rachel, if you want to hold that up, or you're trying to scrape the sides. Yes. I think there's a spatula over to your right if you need one.
Just get this and then we can talk.
Ooh, now we can hear it. Interesting.
There we go.
So if you're making this at home, this one is also a great one for gluten-free if you have somebody who's gluten-free in your life. We are, in fact, using gluten-free flour today. Ooh, that's nice and smooth.
So it's really smooth. The other thing, if you do this in a blender, then you can pour into the muffin tin straight from the blender.
Yep.
I'm going to pan my muffin tin.
So while Rachel does that, she's just greasing up the muffin tins so that we can add them in. Of course, if you're at home and you don't like using pan spray, you can use butter instead. But this recipe is a really fascinating one, as Rachel was talking about a little bit earlier. We are still trying to figure out where this one came from.
You know what? I'm going to interrupt you for a second, Lacey.
Yes.
I am actually, it really is going to be easier to pour. I'm going to make a mess.
Hey.
Oh.
Nicely done. Well done, Rachel.
Now I'm going to set the fire alarm off because that went too well.
Usually when Rachel and I are doing cooking together, I get tasked with the pouring of things into smaller containers. So Rachel is doing amazing. If you want to give claps to Rachel today, she's doing great.
I cannot pour things neatly. Oops,
You're doing great. This looks beautiful.
that was weirdly neat.
Yeah, nicely done. Um,
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
that's okay. So as Rachel mentioned earlier, we really don't know where this recipe got its name from. If you've heard us talking about Dutch babies, which is a similar dish, um, all of the other pancakes that are still around in countries where German, it might have gotten the German name from, don't have a recipe like this that we've been able to find. Dutch babies, that particular name, the story goes that it was by a family in the Pacific Northwest who owned a restaurant, and they one day decided to make this dish. And the owner of the restaurant called it a Deutsch Puff, which was bastardized into Dutch, as often happens, like with Pennsylvania Dutch, who are German, but they get called Dutch because of that challenge with the Deutsch word.
I'm just gonna put these in the oven, and that was it for the mixing.
Yep. And so this is the sit and wait part. Um, we have been known to go Great British Bake Off in this moment and sit and watch the oven. But this is 10 to 12 minutes, right, Rachel, at 425?
Yes. Obviously, your oven may vary,
Mhm.
but you want it to be 425. You want it to be hot enough so that they're gonna puff. Oh, and Lacey, you were talking about the bubbles. Uh, life before leavening.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So the way that this recipe works is because we have whipped all that air into it. The pancakes need that air. Of course, modern pancakes, true German pancakes today all have a leavening agent in them, and it's typically baking soda or baking powder. And that is something that actually doesn't come into super great use until the 19th century. The first cookbook that we have found such things in was Amelia Simmons' 1796, Rachel?
That sounds right.
So the
Yep.
cookbook is Amelia Simmons American Cookery. And I'm pretty sure that's 1796.
Many
Um,
editions out there.
yeah, and it's widely available online. So if you want to dig into that cookbook, you can grab it on a digitized version of it on Google Books, on Gutenberg. I wouldn't be surprised if it's on the HathiTrust. Lots of places that have digitized books, you'll be able to find this one. And she uses an ingredient that was called salaterus, which is the what we would think of today as baking soda. Baking powder that we use today didn't come in until the 19th century.
So in this case, I find this recipe interesting too because the cakes of this period were very heavy because they were yeast cakes. So they're not that sort of light, fluffy cake that we're used to. And so this recipe is one of the few light, I feel
Hmm.
like airy things that we make.
Yeah. And if they weren't leavened by yeast, they were leavened by whipping eggs until
Mm.
they were quite frothy. If you've ever made meringues or anything like that, they get their puff because you have whipped so much air into the egg, and that's the case for a lot of 18th century cakes as well.
But the other thing I found while I was researching these last night was that somebody wrote a book called Pancake, like a history, as one should,
Okay.
and I forgot to write his name down. Um, but I'm guessing there's probably one book on pancakes, and he was separating these sort of oven baked things that we tend to call pancakes as separate from the things that you make on top of the stove. And his separation was that these things require a mold. You're not, instead of, your regular pancake, you're going to pour it into the pan and it's going to make its own little circle and you're going to flip that versus
Yeah.
a popover or a Dutch baby or these where it tells you to, what does it say? To take these out, put them in cups. Is that what this one is called?
To put them in cups. Yep.
So that
So
was his,
butter your
his
cups and put in your mixture and bake them 3/4 of an hour. You'll also note we are not baking them that long. We don't need to bake them that long. We're doing them in a slightly warmer oven, so we get a little bit of a puff on them. My guess is that they were intending to bake them in a little bit cooler oven, maybe 300, 325.
What was his name? Oh, Sam has my author's name.
Oh, I was trying to find it.
Ken Albala,
I'll put it in the chat too.
Albala, Pancake, A Global History. And now I have to read this book, obviously. Thank you, Sam. Lacey and I were texting each other about this last night, and I was like, now I want all of the pancakes. I would like regular pancakes now. I would like some popovers.
Yep. And I think we forgot to say earlier, the texture of this recipe, like the batter, is more along the lines of a crepe than it is a pancake. And with that whipping of with that egg, and getting that in there, beating a bunch of air in it, that is what gets the puff on it. In some ways, it's different from the crepe. But
it's going to be a little more custardy than a.
Correct.
I'm going to do the Great British Bake Off thing, and I'm going to go stare in my oven.
While Rachel does that, I'm going to pause the recording so that if anybody has any questions they'd like to shout out verbally, you can feel free to do so. I'm going to do that right now. All right, so Rachel has leaned down to go ahead and grab the.
I think they're going to need. I'm going to give them another 2 minutes because they're not brown.
So we're looking for just a golden brown, nice puff. They are going to collapse really quickly, so Rachel's going to have to like whip them out of the oven, and we'll pause whatever we're talking about, so that we can take a look at them when they're fresh out of the oven.
Oh, sorry, not my oven. Sorry, so many button pressing. All right, 2 minutes. I want to eat these.
Mm-hmm. We served these recently at a program where we were talking about kind of summery and garden related things, and what was accessible at the Masons level of society. So we served these with gooseberry jam and with syllabub, which is a boozy whipped cream drink from the 18th century. And that's kind of, to me, the height of 18th century dessert, because to be able to afford to take the time and effort to make this whipped cream, you also theoretically...
Which has a lot of sugar in it as well.
Exactly. And if you want the most amazing experience, you let it sit for like 4 to 6 hours at minimum, and the cream separates and the booze gets clarified at the bottom.
And you need a spoon and a glass again, so it's not something you're picking up with your hand and eating on your napkin as you might if you were lower class.
Correct. But I watched people dollop gooseberry jam and then a little bit of the syllabub on top of their German puffs, and amazing.
There's nothing you can't do to these, I think.
Mm-hmm. Although sadly, gooseberries, which were a big thing in 18th century Virginia and in 18th century England, you cannot have in most places in the on the East Coast today, because the gooseberry plant is a secondary carrier for white pine blister rust, which takes out white pines in this area, which is a native plant. So for our friend joining us today from the UK, we got British gooseberry jam. Just putting that out there.
We also can't have currants a lot of times, which is very sad, because they have Dutch elm. I think they're Dutch secondary carrier for Dutch elm.
So white gooseberry and currants are both in the ribes genus. They are both carriers for white pine blister rust and for this other one for the elm. Yep. So Rachel, we have a question in the chat. We are wondering about how you and your colleagues have learned about the historical difference in egg sizes, the types of butter that were used. We found such detail in History in the Kitchen intriguing. Is it all based on documentary evidence?
It is. We spend a lot of time falling down rabbit holes into things like butter, and I mean, plenty of people have done research into cooking, so a lot of the answers are already out there for us. But the salted butter one, I know I fell down a rabbit hole because I was wondering, I was like, why don't any of these recipes have salt? Because I bet you if you opened a Dutch baby recipe, it's going to have a quarter teaspoon of salt
Oh.
in it. And why do these never have salt? So, oh, hold on, Lacey.
While Rachel's checking on that, I also noticed that difference between butter and fresh butter or new butter or sweet butter. So that told me that there's something in other butter that's not normal. And as we dug a little bit deeper into how butter was preserved in the 18th century, we started seeing things like salt being added. So they were packed, the butter was packed in cakes in salt after having had as much of the milk byproduct washed out of the butter as a preservation method so that salt gets incorporated into the butter, and most butter is perforce salted.
And you see a
Um,
lot of fresh milk, which makes you wonder, okay, so when were we using sour milk? Were we using sour milk as a leavening agent sometimes?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to pull these out, right? They're not super brown on the top, but they are definitely brown on the bottom.
All right. I'm going to pull down Rachel's spotlight so we can see those a little bit better. Ooh, can you hold them up to the camera, Rachel? We
Yep,
can
let me grab
see
this one
that.
out. This one has a
Oh, look at that puff. They're not huge, but they've got a nice little puff on them. And they should release, they look like they're going to release very beautifully from the pan.
and they are already shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Yeah, I
see
can see that.
the
The depressions. Yeah. Which makes a nice little, as ultimately a nice little depression vessel for jam or whatever it is that you want to put on top of them. These are, as we talked about with the syllabub, these would also be amazing with whipped cream. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into the ingredients question again. And how do we know about things like eggs? Ooh, nice brown bottom there. So we know about the eggs because we know what chicken breeds that people in the past had access to, what they were available. And as a general rule, even without other evidence, we know that those breeds tend to be a little bit smaller. Some of those breeds have survived through to today, and they are much smaller than modern egg producing chickens, which were bred specifically to produce more and bigger and better eggs. We also have archaeological evidence where we have the bones of these chickens and we can compare them to the bones of modern chickens in similar or different breeds and see how big they are. So we know perforce that these eggs that they were producing were smaller. Also, every once in a blue moon, we get really lucky and we find things like whole chicken eggs, which we have actually found one here at Gunston Hall underneath the floorboards in the mansion. And it is smaller than a modern egg.
but who was doing what and why is it in the mansion?
Why is I'm like, did a rat bring it in? Because we have found rats nests in the mansion. This was a challenge they had to fight with in the past. Did a snake bring it in? Because that's also like, how did this end up? Um, or was it part of a secreted cache of goods meant for protections of the house? That is something that we have seen cultural evidence of here in Virginia, both by people of European descent and people of African descent. They want to make sure that the people and the house that they're in are safe. And so they create these caches of goods that are meant to protect the house, and might include things like shoes or pieces of clothing, pieces of glass or crystal, rocks or shells that had particular meanings to people. Um, we can find all kinds of evidence about this in other places. We just got really lucky here, and for some reason we have an egg.
Imagine the archaeologists when they find it and they're like, huh, well, that's
Oh,
weird.
yes. Yes, it was our curator when we found this one because it was in the mansion, and she was like, Lacey, we found an egg." Like an egg, like a whole egg. Yes, a whole egg. That was really cool. So which jam did you decide to go with, Rachel? We've got a
I one on each. Look,
nice.
This is
So you
I am the least fancy cook in the universe, and I am totally a it tastes good, but it's not so pretty. So this is for me, this is very fancy.
this is looking beaut. So just as a reminder, we have lingonberry and was it raspberry jam, Rachel?
Blackberry.
Blackberry jam and powdered sugar, and we got a couple of fresh raspberries. We're really talking this up. So this is obviously a really great serving suggestion for kids, but if you are doing this alone, mix a little butter, sugar, and sherry together, and you will also have an absolutely amazing little recipe there. For those of you who are wondering why Rachel is handing things off, but you can't see me eating anything, we've got our other volunteer Sam behind the scenes there, so we're gonna get some input on what the taste is like.
I am going to eat this one. They're healthy. Oh, I love them and talking with my mouth full. Ooh, they're really good with the lingonberry.
Are they?
Yeah, like the tartness of the lingonberries.
That was one of the things I liked about the gooseberries as well, is they had that
Mhm.
little bit of tartness on them.
And they're not sweet.
Hmm.
They are, a tiny bit sweet because they have that little bit of sugar in them, but they're not at all sweet. Um, what do you think, Sam? He's given a thumbs up from off camera. He is not talking with his mouth full, unlike his mother.
You say
So
one of the things that the sugar does is it helps give that really beautiful brown that we're seeing on the bottom, particularly with a gluten-free flour, which is what we're using today, because Rachel's making me a batch. Um, because I am gluten-free, we decided to go that way today.
this one
Um,
for one flour they're perfect.
yeah, yeah, it's a great one for this.
I'm sending Sam to you.
Amazing. I'm gonna have to go off camera because I'm not allowed to have food in the library, so I'll be right back, and you'll get a visual in a second.
So I think that if you look at these, they're a lot, and you've had a popover. They're sort of a lot, there's a lot less brown on the top than a popover. And I don't know whether that's the flour or the amount of eggs, but now I want to do like all these sorts of taste tests and the different kinds of oven pancakes, I guess is what they were called in Sweden. They were oven pancakes to see.
So
She's
good.
also not going to talk with her mouth full. I'm classy.
I mean, I have talked with my mouth full before.
So Lacey, let's have a whole. I was saying that I want to make all of these different ones and see what the difference is.
Oh my
Like,
gosh, yes. Oh,
we'll
you
have
know what I just got? I got that nice nutmeggy flavor sitting on my tongue. That's something that is definitely different from modern pancakes and even some of the other ones that we were looking at. Nutmeg is in so many 18th century recipes. When Rachel and I have a series of History in the Kitchen or one of our other cooking programs, and we're like, hang on, how do we do a menu without nutmeg?
that.
What happened
We don't know
here?
how we did it.
Because it is in nearly everything. Sweet, savory, nutmeg is one of the most ubiquitous flavors in the 18th century.
Um, I noticed that the Finnish recipe that we were looking at had vanilla in them, which is
Hmm.
something we never see in the 18th century.
Almost never. Yeah, there are very, very few examples of it in the 18th century.
Whereas that's our standard for what we put in all baked goods. They were
Hmm.
using orange flower water or rose water, which
Yep.
amazingly these don't have either. I wonder, I've
Be
you
an interesting ad.
write down these questions, like
Yeah.
whether Scottish recipes were less likely to have a lot of questions.
Yeah. That's the joy and the challenge of history is that we ultimately create more questions than we answer sometimes. Um, like we said, we still don't know, like, is this truly a German recipe? It doesn't match anything that we could find in modern German cooking. Um, but it's
And
it's always it always opens up the door for more adventure and more exploration.
there is like a German puff, but it's not the same.
It is not the same.
It's totally, I can't remember why, but it was totally different sort of setup.
Hmm. And it's funny because there is pancakes, Pfannkuchen, That's the German word Pfannekuchen. And that's a pancake, but it's a thinner than an American pancake. Um, that word can also sometimes mean, particularly in Berlin, the donut that we in most other parts of the world would call a Berliner, which is really funny. But then you start getting into other pancake type dishes, like a German potato pancake. In modern German, that's a Kartoffelpuffer, which
That
is
was amazing.
I'm trying to spell this now for Elaine. Kartoffelpuffer. And if you made that connection, it's got puff in it. They use the word puff in German to represent some of these kind of pancakey-like dishes. We might think of the German pancake in relationship to the Jewish latke, Altke. Um,
Oh, the German puff that comes up when if you Google German puff is it's shoe pastry.
yeah, it's a
So
profiterole type
eclair,
dish.
yeah, an
Yeah,
eclair or a cream puff. Also
yeah,
delicious.
yeah. Well, we have reached the end of our plan session today, just a couple of moments early. So I will say that Rachel and I will hang out on Zoom for a couple more minutes if anybody has any questions or thoughts that they want to shout out verbally once I turn the recording off. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us for History in the Kitchen today. We are super excited that you have been with us for the last 45 minutes and appreciate your patience with our technical challenges a little bit earlier. We are going to do this again in January. In January, our recipe is eggs in croquette, which is
Very
a
fancy.
very, very fancy fried egg in sauce made into a little puff. We went with a lot of puffs for History in the Kitchen this year. So that is on Saturday, January 10th, again at 10:30 a.m. Zoom will open about 10:15. And we hope to see you for that. Otherwise, check out our website soon for all of our upcoming events, including our Cocktails by Candlelight series, Nature Thursdays for families with kiddos, and a variety of other things coming up that will launch on January 1st.
Thank you, everyone. Do make these. They are
Oh, they're
super
so
simple. They're so
delightful.
simple and
Yep.
so good.
I'm gonna drop the recipe in the chat one more time just in case you've missed it. So that you can download it and make it yourself. And again, ultimately, this will be on our website along with the recording of the video.